Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell. You'll get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And when I'm not asking Bruce, hey, how big was Batista's? Well, you know. One of the things I like to do is help people save money. And if you're watching this video right now and you're in a 30-year loan, man, you're overpaying your single biggest bill, and you may not even realize it. I want you to do a little experiment for me. Take your calculator out, multiply your monthly house payment by 360 payments. That's how many payments there are in a 30-year loan. That big scary number, that's your total of payments. You're looking at that number? You know you can do better. Keep more of your own money right now and go to savewithconrad.com. Or maybe you've got credit card debt. Man, it's not a matter of if I can save you money with that. Your average interest rate on a credit card is more than 20%. And by the way, all the interest you pay on those credit cards, it's not tax deductible. Whereas the mortgage interest, well, that is tax deductible. So if you owe this debt, it's up to you how to pay it back. Doesn't it make sense to get the cheapest rate possible and the greatest tax deduction possible? Find out how much money you can save right now for free at savewithconrad.com. You don't need perfect credit. Even scores in the 500s can be approved, and it's no cost out of pocket. But maybe best of all, we're licensed in more than 40 states. We can help more families than ever before. But how much can we save you? Find out right now for free with a quick quote from savewithconrad.com.
Hello and welcome to Grilling JR. This is Paul Bromwell, and I'm joined by the voice of wrestling, Mr. Jim Ross. JR, how are you this week?
I'm good, Paul. Good to see you again. Looking forward to the show. Should be good. One of my favorite guys we're going to talk about today, new Hall of Famer and all that good stuff. So it should be a fun show.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, JR. You're right. The Mastodon, the man they call Vader, just went into the WWE Hall of Fame. And, man, we're excited. I'm excited. I'm excited to talk about Vader with you because you were a part of his career in many ways, from WCW, WWF. And actually, we're going to play a clip towards the end of the show where he confronts you in the ring a little bit, and then Shamrock saves you. So I'm looking forward to rolling through this. You ready to get started?
Ready to go.
All right, let's do it. So Leon White, born May 14th, 1955. He was a big bastard who could be a monster and stun wrestling fans with his ability to get aerial. A former offensive lineman for the University of Colorado, drafted by the LA Rams. But sadly, JR, he never got to play it down due to a knee injury, but he still got that NFC Conference Championship ring for the time he was with them in 1979. JR, talk about it a little bit. When's the first time you remember hearing about Leon? Was it as a college football player, NFL wrestler?
It was as a football player. He played at University of Colorado. They at that time were in the Big 8 conference, which Oklahoma was also a member of. So those Colorado guys got a lot of publicity in that part of the world where I lived at that time. So his football got him on the map. I heard about him as a wrestler when he was being trained by Brad Rangans. So the football came first.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He was trained by Brad, and his reputation as a trainer is hard to match, isn't it?
Yeah, he's a tough guy. Brad's a great wrestler and a real good coach. But he pushed everybody. He came after Brad was a Vern Gagne guy, and Vern also had a reputation of training guys real hard, real physical. The old philosophy back in those days is let's see if we can run this guy off. And the thought process behind that is, well, if he's not going to make it through practice, he's not going to make it through the game. So, but Brad had strong coaching principles and philosophy. So Leon couldn't have gone to a better guy for Leon.
Well, not only does he learn the business in the AWA, but also Germany, JR. He works a lot for Otto Wanz, ends up winning the Catch Wrestling Association title, ending Otto's 9-year reign very early in his career. Someone that big, he took to the business so easily and so quickly. I guess it's no surprise just how fast that he gets a major title win early in his career, right?
Athletic big men draw money, Cowboy Bill Watts has always said. So Leon was not never a Clydesdale. Leon was a thoroughbred. He just was a very large thoroughbred, and because his feet were so light and he could move around, he was destined for stardom. The only thing that's going to prevent Leon from being a big time player from the get go was injuries, which everybody has to deal with. But Leon was he's almost one of those can't miss projects. He had everything: size, quickness. First time I saw Leon do a moonsault, I almost, messed my pants. It was it was something you just never saw.
Yeah.
And you see him climbing the top rope and all that good stuff. Then you start thinking, how's he going to land? Well, he's going to land on the other guy, and he's got to be able to protect the other guy, or he's going to do that whole one time, and it'll never be seen again. So Leon was extremely good athlete. At bottom line, a real good athlete, and he proved that time and time again.
Gifted, JR, no doubt about it. A man his size, like you said, moonsault and protect the guys landing on all at the same time.
Yeah.
Just an incredible monster. So listen, the story, according to Dave Meltzer, when doing our research this week, and I love this nugget, that New Japan Pro Wrestling had the idea of Big Van Vader for a while, the character Big Van Vader, and they were going to bring in Jim Hellwig for the role, but he signed with the WWF first, and obviously that didn't work out too bad for him. He became the Ultimate Warrior. So then they brought in Leon White. The role was to be a monster foreigner who would do short matches and blow through everyone. But looking back, JR, could have anyone done the gimmick like Leon?
Not really. Not in my opinion. He was perfect for that role. Body, attitude, everything fit. So there may have been somebody else who could have come in and done a good job, but it seems like that role of Vader was made for Leon White.
Absolutely agree. Now that we've seen what we've seen and wrestling history has happened, I can't imagine anyone else being Big Van Vader, but Leon. And it's pretty cool, though, when you hear these stories, how things all played out and what could have been. But his big, gigantic wrestling debut is such a tremendous piece of business in Japan. It's still talked about decades later. You go back to December 27th, 1987 at Sumo Hall. Antonio Inoki beats Riki Choshu by disqualification. And after the match, Vader, Takeshi Kitano, who is the Johnny Carson of Japan at the time, and Maso Saito come to the ring and challenged Inoki. Vader wins, JR, in just under 3 minutes, which is something that never happened to Inoki, and the building goes crazy. They riot. Do you remember hearing about this at the time?
Yeah, I remember hearing the stories of the riot and how that Leon, the whole thing was about Inoki. Inoki's a god theirs, and there's really not anybody right now in pro wrestling in America I can compare him to, because he was Inoki. He was everything. He was The Rock and Austin and all these guys rolled into one. And for somebody to come into your home territory on night one and beat you in under 3 minutes is pretty amazing. It also shows you how smart Inoki was. Taking a loss like that, you could say, well, there's a little bit of fluke to it. He wasn't ready and all these things. But Inoki was a brilliant booker, and him losing the way he lost, that he set up, was a stroke of brilliance.
Vader arrived on the wrestling scene in a big way, Jim. He goes on to become the first foreigner in New Japan history to win the IWGP title at the first wrestling show ever held in the Tokyo Dome. I'm sure Meltzer gave it like 5 or 6 stars. But, man, this is a huge impact. I mean, for Vader to make big time here, IWGP title in the Tokyo Dome. It's incredible.
Couldn't do it any bigger. I mean, if you're going to win something big, that's the arena. It was new, fresh. But Leon didn't miss a beat. When you play on a big stage at D1 level, like in Colorado, you got football in your background. Leon was a hell of a high school player, full scholarship player at Colorado, played center. I think he was the first or second team All-American as a center, a big offensive lineman. He rose to the occasion when for all this competition, which I always thought was pretty cool.
Well, listen, it continues on for him with another legendary match and another legendary opponent, JR, as the match with Stan Hansen stands out. Even way before they ever face off in America, it's happening over in Japan. Stan Hansen, Vader, they work stiff, they're snug, they're battling it out when Vader suffers a broken nose. Eventually, Hansen, who was notorious for being blind as bad as it was, accidentally pokes Vader in his eye, causing it to come out of socket. Vader would take his mask off and pop his eye back in the freaking ring. I mean, my God, what a tough son of a bitch Vader was, dude.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. He was Leon was really tough, and that was a scary situation. And that's where I first saw, not first saw, as far as I really took a longer look at Leon, and him, his performance with Stan. We hired both of them part-time work at WCW, and I thought that was one of our better hires, quite frankly. You got two guys that were super over in Japan, two guys that would be great heels or baby faces if you put them in that scenario, but they were players, and they were big and physical, and I thought that's what we needed at that time. And so the booking committee, kind of went along with it. Jim Cornette and I were probably the biggest advocates of getting Leon to WCW. And I think that in the committee, they didn't want to challenge us verbally. I think they probably just acquiesced that, oh yeah, these two guys, these two rednecks from the South here want these guys really bad. So let's do that, and we'll and we went to listen to them argue. So it was fun stuff.
JR, your recall is spot on. That's exactly what happened. From the Observer, Jim Ross and Jim Cornette were on the WCW booking committee and pitched hard for Vader, especially after Ross saw the Hansen match. WCW offered him what at that time was huge money, guaranteed contract, where he would split time between WCW and New Japan starting in the summer of 1990. So there you go. You recall it exactly as it happened. Do you remember who put the contract together and how you figured all that out for him? I mean, this is an interesting time here. We're going to have him come in part-time for WCW, part-time for New Japan.
Well, it was a blessing and a curse. You got to balance the schedule. He wanted to protect his Japanese dates, where he'd worked so hard to build a brand. So that had to be factored in first. And then around that schedule, we do the WCW schedule for a specific length of time. Always had a definitive start date and end date. It was a little higher maintenance because we weren't used to doing that, but that's what we needed to do to get those guys signed. And the other thing about that is that by him having his dates in Japan, I felt like we had some protection built in that we would not overexpose Leon, and because he was not going to be there all the time. He was a 400-pound attraction wrestler anyway. He should not have been on television every week. Even if we had access to him, it would not have been doing him any favors because he kept him special. So our thoughts were. So, and then the WCW and Turner people worked out the contract. We come up with the numbers. It was pretty easy once you get the compensation established, and then establish his dates. And there you go. There's your elements that you really need. But I think in the long haul, Leon was very much a capitalist. He liked to make money, and there's nothing wrong with that. We all do. But I think it put a lot on his plate, and I think that's where injuries started occurring because his work schedule was wearing him down, and he never had a chance to heal. Was the main thing. He wasn't going through things that other wrestlers had not gone through, but they would take time off, or they could step away and heal. Leon never had that opportunity to step away and heal. I think that was a detriment in the long haul for him.
Well, he makes the big debut here, and JR, I'm going to share the clip with you. We're going to watch it. We have a couple clips that we're going to share of Vader and his timeline, and I'm really looking forward to this. This is the big debut. It's Great American Bash. It's July 14th, 1990. He's taking on Tom Zink. The match doesn't last long. It's 2 minutes, but man, what a fun one. Let's take a look at it.
And ladies and gentlemen, his opponent, making his debut in World Championship Wrestling, parts unknown, weighing 399 pounds,
Wrestling. Bob, this is a very unusual costuming that this huge man is wearing.
Jim, he's wearing an ancient samurai warrior headpiece of some kind, and as you say, bizarre is about the only way to explain that as you look at it. A big mountain of a man, 399 pounds, big Dan Vader. I have never seen him in action, Jim. I've never watched him in the ring. I don't have any idea what you can expect from the big man.
He apparently some sort of ceremonial thing with his headdress and shoulder attire there.
That may be some type of samurai ceremony that he's doing, Jim, with that headpiece. My heavens.
Van Vader, that's, as I said, there's very few ways to describe.
Wow.
The steam shooting from that, there's nothing connected at all to to that apparatus that he's wearing. This is one big man, 399 pounds. We have seen videotape of him in action. He is one of the most sadistic, one of the most physically intimidating athletes that I have ever seen, Bob, in my career.
And Z-Man has got to be wondering, what the heck am I going to do and how am I going to wrestle a guy like this?
Z-Man, an outstanding competitor. But will he be enough on this occasion to withstand big Van Vader? Big clubbing forearms.
Well, that's certainly not where he wants to be, back in that corner and caught there to take those tremendous blows from Vader. Some ways Z-Man's got to rely on his quickness and speed.
Good grief. 399 right to the corner. The Z-Man doing all he can to stand. You've got to admire this youngster for accepting this challenge and signing a contract to wrestle this very brutal man. And there's a clothesline, a short one right to the side of the head of Tom Zink, the Z-Man. Referee Randy Anderson checking the Z-Man. He's almost out of it right now. What a blow.
A man that big has got to be very, very strong. And there he shows you just some of that tremendous strength. He just lifts him up right by the ears, right over the top rope.
Hauntingly strong. Missed with that clothesline. Drop kick. Just his feet
didn't go down.
Didn't go down. Caught in midair is a Z-Man. Look at the strength of this big man. This big monster's holding Z-Man up, who weighed in at 251. Military press slam. This man is dangerous. Drops it all. 399 on the Z-Man, and big Van Vader so dominant here at the Great American Bash. And you're seeing, ladies and gentlemen, the first North American appearance of this big man.
Jim, I don't want to say impressive is the word. I would have to say bizarre is the way it is with this guy.
Vertical vertical suplex. He just nailed him. People are looking at this man in awe.
Yes, sir. Everybody's stunned, really.
Veteran wrestling fans that just are speechless. Boom, what a clothesline. Tom Zink may be speechless as well. Big splash, 399. He's got the leg grapevine. My goodness, big Van Vader is devastating. This big man is awesome.
Ladies and gentlemen, the winner of the match, Big Van Vader.
There it is, JR. Vader has arrived in North America, and my goodness, what a debut. Squashing the Z-Man.
Yeah, it might have been a little long, actually, in hindsight, looking back at it. Always good to hear Bob Cottle's voice. Gary Michael Capetta, the world's most dangerous announcer. Brought back good memories just hearing that package and how that all came together. But nice opening match for Leon. You know, he got people talking. That's what you wanted.
He's part-time, barely in WCW at this point, as we mentioned earlier. But, man, it's important to have him under contract. I'm sure Vince has got an eye on Vader.
Vince would have had an eye on Vader wanting to be full-time, and Vader was not willing to leave his Japanese dates. The only reason we got Vader and somebody else didn't was because we were going to continue to allow him to fulfill his Japanese commitments. I don't think Vince was in the mindset of doing that at that point in time, or he's got to hire a big-time talent part-time.
Well, speaking of it, Vader goes back, works in Japan, but he comes back 7 months later. He's back. It's Wrestle War, and he's taking on Stan Hansen. And we know we're not going to get a New Japan style match here between Stan and Vader, but it had everybody licking their chops because this is the first time you're going to get Vader and Hansen in the ring together. And JR, once again, we have that clip. We're going to go to the ending to that match. So let's check this one out.
Around here, they're too big. Watch that chair. Watch it.
Whoa, yeah, man, I'm telling you, we're right in amongst them. We're right in amongst them here.
They're exchanging blows. I don't get paid for this kind of. You may be used to this. I'm not.
Man, I'm telling you. Woo. That got me flowing there.
Yeah, I'm flowing too, and I don't know. I can't tell you how much I'm flowing.
Brother, they knocked my Cavassier over here. I mean my water.
Right hand by Hansen. If there's anything that's not tied down out here, guys, take it to the back. Good grief.
I told you this is going to be a barn burner. They're coming back this way.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm about to go the other way here. I don't need to be
Yeah, I'm retired. I don't need to be in it either.
Again. Later that big forearm. Got Hansen up. Slams him. Good gosh. Gut first.
Whoa,
right across.
baby.
And ribs and all. He may have broken some ribs right there. He dropped him right across the railing. The elbow to the solar plexus. Hansen's got bruises and whelps all over him, and so does Van Vader.
I mean, I'm talking about getting it on. They're getting it on. We're talking about pain, blues, and agony here. Big Stan got to get himself up there because I know the fight ain't left him. I know it's there, but them ribs got to be hurting, Jimbo. They got to be hurting.
All I know is the only thing between me and Van Vader was the American dream. Thank goodness for that for me. Throwing these chairs around here. What's wrong with this guy? They're both crazy. I've never seen anything like this in my entire career. Hansen now pulling Vader back out. And he's now taking him to the stairs. Those heavy wooden stairs there. Vader face first there, Dream.
Lordy, let's flood it. Whoa, look at this here. I'm talking about a fierce battle. We ain't talking about nothing pretty here. We ain't talking about wrestling hole here. We talking about two big old boys that just out here having a good time. I don't know how good a time it is, but they out here for the fight.
It's like one of those Saturday night specials down in Austin, isn't it?
Boy, you ain't just a bird dogging it.
Van Vader back in the ring. Hansen, they're just beating each other up. I mean, literally beating each other up.
Oh, Pee-wee tried to get in the middle of it right there. Headbutts.
Headbutting each other right there.
I don't know how much longer Pee-wee let this thing go on here. Whoa, watch out. Here comes old Pee-wee.
Pee-wee going outside. Be careful, Pee-wee. Pee-wee's going to disqualify both of them. Anderson's going to disqualify both of them.
Yeah.
I can't blame him, Green.
Yeah. I'll tell you that. I knew that was coming because they've been in and out. They've been after it. What's going on here, though, now?
Fans not too happy about that decision, but the referee had no alternative.
Ladies and gentlemen, both wrestlers have been disqualified. It is a double disqualification.
Vader with that big forearm off the top rope. That's 400 pounds. I've never seen anybody 400 pounds come off the top rope in my life. Well, we're going to keep it right here. Vader went for the big splash and
I'll
Hansen
tell you what,
rolled out
this
of the way.
thing ain't over, Jimbo. I guarantee you this ain't over.
It may be a double disqualification officially, but this fight is still on. Football tackle by big Stan Hansen. Flattens Van Vader. Hansen now, that bull rope. He's going to try to choke Vader out. It may take the border guards and militia all to break this one up.
There ain't a lot of people running out here to stop this thing either, and I don't blame them.
Vader, Hansen's got that rope around his neck. Takes him over the top
Took him
rope.
like a bale of hay there. Look at this. Man, they better secure the back area because I think these two men ain't through right here.
Now Vader's got Hansen by the throat. He's going to drag him to the back.
He's dragging him back.
They may fight all the way to Scottsdale.
Oh, Mesa.
They're still beating each other up. Not a surprise. It ended in a double disqualification. I don't know what's going to take to settle this between these two guys, but regular rules won't ever do it.
WCW live and in color right here. This is what it's all about.
Fans Good grief, well, look out in the back. That's all I can tell you.
My God, JR. They're right in your freaking lap, dude. They almost hit you a few times.
Yeah, that was just being ornery because I used to tell those guys, there's 4 sides to the ring. Go someplace else. You got 3 other choices. Just get the hell out of here. That was some big humanity being moved around us, and
anything could have happened.
Yeah, always fun to work with Dusty, and Dusty has had fun out there announcing, and sometimes I don't think he gets the credit that he deserves. We had some nice outings, and Dusty at points in time when he was really motivated, and his head was clearly in the game for broadcasting. He did a hell of a good job. I enjoyed working with him.
I was just sitting there thinking, man, you two together, like you said, when motivated, whatever, that's fun. It's fun to listen to you two and him come off of you and banter off of you. And that was some excitement there. I enjoyed that.
Yeah. We had good chemistry, and we liked each other, and that always helps when you have like and respect for your partner, your broadcast partner. I certainly did with Dusty. And, you got to remember, he was coming off the fact of being one of the most celebrated stars in the history of wrestling, to doing some announcing. And that takes a special kind of personality to be able to readjust and refocus on a new skill set. And Dusty worked very hard to try to do that.
Well, Vader looks like a big badass, no doubt about it. First Tom Zink, then they walks off the brawl, the double DQ here with Stan Hansen. He comes back Halloween Havoc 91 in a Chamber of Horrors match. Not sure about that one, but then he comes back again in 92, and he's full-time now in WCW, JR. Was it difficult booking Vader while he's also going through those Japanese commitments? Did you find it was challenging to do that?
Well, the dates always stayed pretty firm when we got the dates. So it's just a matter of planning. And we all knew he was part-time. We all knew where he was going to be when he wasn't here in WCW at that time. So, it wasn't overwhelming. We knew the rules of engagement before we started, so that's how it was, and we made it work.
Do you remember feedback from the guys in the locker room when Vader came in 92? Did they enjoy working with Leon, or any feedback from?
Well, there was some trepidations by some because he was so big and he worked a very snug, stiff style. So there was some trepidation in that respect, but by and large, nothing really alarmingly bad at all.
And you said it before, but Bill Watts had to love Vader, didn't he?
Oh yeah, big, rugged, athletic heels, monster heels was right down Watts' alley because for years that's what his MO was in Mid-South Wrestling. He'd bring in killer heels and he'd work with them. So he had a lot of respect for those big athletic guys.
Well, Vader's full-time, JR. He's on the scene, and you guys decide, let's pair him up with Harley Race. Do you remember whose idea it was to pair him up with Harley at this point?
I really don't. Somebody on the booking committee. It wasn't a bad idea because, number one, it got Harley work, and we all loved Harley, and Harley needed a place to land at that point in time. So, and we thought he could help Leon. Leon was a handful sometimes on the road, just, being a little moody. And so forth. And Harley was all business and was a real good, probably the best guy because Harley was not intimidated by Vader. Harley chew his ass out and when he needed it. And so Harley he wasn't intimidated by Leon whatsoever, but most people were. And I think that's why they got along so well is that Vader developed great respect for Harley Race. And knew that, I might be able to beat Harley in a fight. Don't know that's a guarantee. But I know this, he will fight me if the situation arose. So I thought it was a good pairing, for those guys. It was a handful to manage Leon on the road as he started getting older.
It sounded like a match made in heaven for Harley and Vader. But man, here we go. It's the first big program for Vader, and this is what I remember as a kid watching. It's Sting and it's Vader. These guys were so good together, JR. Why the chemistry? Why did it work so well between these two?
It's hard to, what does chemistry mean? What is that? How do you determine good chemistry and what isn't. I don't know if there's an answer to that question. They just had it, and Sting was very patient and courageous, because he could get in there and take Leon's best shots, because that's what was going to make the match. And Leon was just a big, crazy runaway bull, and Sting knew that had to manifest itself for the match to be completed on schedule, so to speak. So, but Sting and Vader just had great chemistry, and it was a match that people wanted to see. Sting was the new it guy, and he needed an opponent, somebody that could really threaten him and maybe beat him, because he seemed to be almost impregnable at that time. Not almost the next level unbeatable for Sting at that era. But I thought they had good matches. I always enjoyed calling their contests.
It was rumored, JR, that their first match, Vader ended up breaking some of Sting's ribs, in fact, fracturing his spleen. Working with Vader was just a little bit different than working with a guy, say, like Nature Boy Ric Flair, isn't it?
Yeah, he's 400 pounds, and he didn't know his own strength. Yeah, sure. But that was how Leon worked. It was novel at points in that era, but a generation before that, it wasn't novel at all, because most of the guys worked stiff and snug and didn't want the fans to see through their bullshit. So they wanted to suspend the disbelief of pro wrestling. And Leon worked very diligently to make sure that happened when he could.
Well, JR, we got another big-time memory for Vader, and it's him winning the WCW World title for the first time at the Great American Bash in 1992 over Sting. And we got the ending to this one. Let's take a look at it.
Ray's calling for the power bomb. And, oh, God! He just planted him with a power bomb. And Vader has won it. Vader has won the world title.
Ladies and gentlemen, the winner of the match and new WCW World Heavyweight Champion, Big Ben Vader.
Big Van Vader, the new WCW Heavyweight Champion of the world.
And you can see, Jim Ross, the crowd is stunned. They can't believe it here in Albany, Georgia. They are stunned.
Stinger needs some medical attention, there's no doubt about that. The fans here are very irate as to what has transpired. Sting may have suffered a concussion. His head slapped right across the steel. It was a violent impact, fans. He suplexed the big man. He did more than anyone thought he could do physically.
Here's the move where Sting had it going his way. He's coming for the corner with the big stinger. He goes over the top, wham! You can see him hit the ring post. Here's Big Van Vader with the power bomb, driving Sting down, wham! Hooks the leg, hooks the former champion. 1, 2, 3, and we have a new WCW World Heavyweight Champion.
Not a lot of shenanigans there. As Leon got a pretty straight win going over, you had to give the babyface a little bit of an out, and that's what the ring post did. But you also noticed that when Leon covered him, he really covered him. There was not like a guys lay on top like they're going to break eggs. He went for the cover. It was serious. God damn it. It wasn't just, going slap a leg, slap your ass, slap your face, slap matches.
He wasn't playing slap ass. He was there to wrestle and to pin people and kick shit. He
tough dude. And so it was I thought the way Sting did it was very classy, and he did the right thing, and he did the best he could to put Vader in a position that made Vader better on the exit than he did on Vader's entrance. The win really enhanced Leon. It validated that Leon is a bad bastard and can beat anybody. If he gets his game unwound and he starts rolling, you're in deep trouble.
And on that night, Sting was in trouble. It's Vader time, and he is the WCW champion. I got to imagine as soon as he signs that full-time deal, The talk has to be, what's the plan for putting the strap on Big Van Vader?
Well, my philosophy on recruiting talents is you always recruit talents with the thought in mind, how high can they go in your mind's eye? In a perfect world, how well can this talent evolve into a main event guy? When I worked for WWE, it was, could this guy possibly headline WrestleMania someday? And a lot of my guys I signed headline WrestleMania someday. And of course, I put them all on the map and made them millionaires and all those good things, which is great. So Leon was just, that was Leon. He was, when you see a guy like that, you can't help but say, well, you know, he's going to be the champion someday. Look, a lot of us thought that about Rock back in the day, or when Austin got hot. That was another, you know, thought. But, you know, Leon was not just, oh, yeah, he's going to be our champion. Leon still had a lot of things to improve on. And his injury situation was one of his body. It was hard for him to travel. You know, people say, well, how is it hard for him to travel? Well, he's fucking 400 pounds. You get in a car and have Harley drive you around the country. A lot of those guys, they were going by cars a lot then, and that was really hard for Leon. So he was cranky. You know, he had hurt him to sit in a car for long periods of time. Think about yourself now. You're going on an airplane trip. You think Conrad jumped off that plane to Dallas and was doing side straddle hops and break dancing at the airport? I don't think so. It's hard on the big person to fly.
Absolutely.
Or anybody. So anyway, that was
even first class. It's not like it's a recliner. I mean, you know, it's still in and out of a plane and all through the airport. None of that's fun. Oh,
no, it's not. So, but Leon was a special talent. You know, I had a great rapport with Leon. I probably got along with him better than just about anybody because I would put him over about his football. I would say nice things to him. I motivated him. I was a decent fucking human being. It's not really a goddamn magic. Treat people like a man, and maybe if you're lucky, they'll reciprocate like a man. And that's what I did with Leon. I just, sometimes I was really firm with Leon, but I was like an old offensive line coach. I was going to get on your ass. And sometimes, you know, he needed to be straightened out a little bit. But boy, when he's right, he was on. He's money.
So JR, if I hear you right, you're saying treat people like you'd like to be treated. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much. It's common sense.
I like that. That's good.
Don't overthink it.
Yeah.
Don't overthink. It's not an overthinking proposition. It's pretty straightforward stuff. So, but Leon was a handful for the wrestlers in the ring. He was a handful at times for the front office. He had to be reassured constantly that everything was cool, and he was playing good, and everything was cool. You know, everything was going to be fine. But he needed that constantly, and that, you know, it gets old.
It does. I've had people that I've worked with that always need that constant reassurance. And it's like, you're doing good. I promise you. I will tell you if you're not.
That's right.
Oh, well, it's been said that Bill Watts' plan, and I want to confirm this with you, with Ron Simmons, was for Vader to beat Sting and injure him, and a couple weeks later have Ron Simmons get the first pinfall on Vader to win the world title. Was that always Bill's plan from what you remember, JR?
Yeah, that was it. Pretty simple. Straightforward booking 101. You know, you had the big monster heel win the title from the number one baby face, and now you need opponents. And Cowboy's dream was to have Ron Simmons become the first black world heavyweight champion. And so that meant him beating, you know, Leon had not been beat. So Ron Simmons beats Leon, much the way that Leon beat Sting with his finish. And that's pretty damn, again, smart, straightforward stuff.
You said at times Leon could be a little difficult to deal with. How about when it came to booking decisions like this? Hey, you're going to lose the title to Ron Simmons. Is that okay? Or is that, okay, we got to talk about this?
It might not have been that straightforward, but he obviously knew the direction we were traveling and what we wanted to do. But he didn't give Cowboy or anybody else that, you know, he's like any talent, Paul. He would resist to see if he could get you to change your mind. If you didn't change your mind, then he would go, okay, we're going to do this. All right. Okay.
Fair enough. Makes sense. Well, JR, we have the ending. It's Baltimore. It's August 2nd, 1992. Ron Simmons gets the big win. Let's check it out.
Vader go to the short clothesline. Simmons hooks the legs. He's got great power. He's underneath one. He got 2 and a half. A half away from a new heavyweight champion. Simmons showed great power that time. Hooking both Vader's arms in a near fall situation. Vader the right hand right to the face. Another left this time. Again catching Simmons in the face. Vader measures it. Oh, what impact from that tree-like form. And a right hand
in, man.
right to the head.
Dick Packer's the referee.
Vader sends him in, the Irish whip. Oh, nobody there. Simmons moves. He's got it cradled. But Vader too strong. He powered
This crowd was so ready to see a champion get champion crown.
And Vader dropped it all 448 right on the chest of Ron Simmons as all the air rushes out of the challenger's body. The champion back up. Back in control is Big Van Vader. In this hard-hitting battle for the heavyweight championship of the world. Vader now in control. Going for a waistlock. And Vader's got him up. Boy went over his back. Got agility by Simmons. And Simmons, he got him in a power slam. He got him in a power slam. He got it. Simmons got it. Simmons has won the match. Simmons is the champion. Simmons
Leon got up pretty quick.
Ladies and gentlemen, the winner and new WCW World Heavyweight Champion, Ron Simmons, the new heavyweight champion of the world. This crowd has been electrified. What a night! Sunday night, August 2nd, will live on in the minds of wrestling fans around the world. Ron Simmons with the gold around his waist.
Buddy, that's goosebumps.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Crowd was so ready, and they make it so. Yeah, we talk about the crowds all the time, and you know, AEW's got such a great fan base. It's been weeks. I don't even remember the last time we had an event, a televised event that didn't feel kind of like that, where you had the crowd solidly behind what was going on. They were paying attention. They weren't intimidated by making noise and being themselves. That crowd there was more than ready. There were people crying. It was there. I've seen all kinds of photos from that event.
So cool.
Yeah, it's just amazing how they invested in Ron Simmons. But the thing about it is that we brought Vader into that title match looking unbeatable. He couldn't be touched, even by the powerhouse Ron Simmons. And then Simmons, with Vader's own momentum, wins the match with a power bomb. We didn't overthink the finish. It was straightforward, easy to process, and it made sense. I think that's the key thing. It made sense, and the execution of it.
JR, and I know I'm going to get some shit for this because that's just what happens, but your soundtrack, your call on that was glorious. I mean, that adds to the moment. We're all excited, hyper, the crowd, the energy, your energy. And by the way, this is like the 4th or 5th clip we've listened to. Do you remember, did you have a sidekick for that card? Because I just heard you only that time.
I don't know what, I was thinking that myself. I don't know what the story was in that deal. I'll have to go back and look it up and all that, but I generally had a partner, somebody, it was various guys.
Every other clip we listened to, you were with someone different, from Bob Caudle to Dusty Rhodes to Jesse Ventura to By Yourself.
Yeah.
That's something else.
I can do the solo stuff if I need to, but contrary to what some of our younger fans, they never heard me do that work.
No.
See, a lot of people don't understand the psychology and the structure of a broadcast team. In AEW, we had 3, what I believe to be very talented guys who have all had experience as play-by-play men. Primarily in their career, they've been play-by-play guys. It's like dancing. You're the first to talk. You're going to get us to break. Blah blah blah. And that's challenging when you change your different roles. It changes your delivery, so to speak, and your timing. Timing is the biggest issue. So it's hard now for me to find in today's AEW to find that role I just was in, because we have 2 more guys talking, and they both have the same timing, the same gait. So it's just a different presentation. It's not bad by any stretch. Obviously, I think our team does a great job, as I would, egocentrically, but I think we do a good job. And so that was one of those situations where maybe Cowboy just may have said, I want you to do this thing. I don't know who else was there. Bob was there, Bob Collar or whatever. I don't really remember the reason why, but it was a front office call, not mine.
Sure. But it's just like you've said it before, with reps, it's going to get better, and the show will always do better. Announcing, working with new people, whatever it is, podcasting, working together with someone. You and I, we're continually trying to get better when I come on and do stuff like this with you. Just right. It takes time. But you're a pro, man. You worked well with Dusty. You worked well with Cottle, Shivani. You're doing it, Lawler. It goes on and on and on. But it is cool because, like you said, some of the listeners here, they didn't get to hear that back then. They weren't around for some of that. But man, what a legacy. So let's talk a little bit more about Vader. He loses the belt here, Ron Simmons. But there is some stuff going on here. We mentioned the injury to Sting. He also worked with Nikita Koloff. There was an injury that occurred there for Nikita. He ended up collecting on his Lloyd's of London insurance policy and then retiring. Joe Thurman broke his back taking a powerbomb from Vader in the ring. There'd be some enhancement talent that would rather leave the building, JR, than work with Vader. Is it just, it's just working with a big guy like that's going to happen? Or was it his ring work? What say you?
Well, it's a little bit of both. I mean, he's such a big guy trying to do a lot of athletic things, and it's hard to control around 400 pounds when you're in that speed, that mode. So yeah, it was. We had talks to Leon all the time about that. Don't do this move. Try to slow this down or whatever. And it would tell Harley, and Harley would preach to him. I think that may have been one of the reasons Leon was in a bad mood a lot, is that he was getting his ass schooled in that car trip with Harley Race, which was good for Leon. But yeah, we had plenty of talks to Leon about that, and he would always throw himself on his sword. He was always apologetic and felt bad that he did it and hurt somebody, but that's just how he worked.
Speaking of injuries, he would start dealing with some of his own injuries, Jim. He had between his knee, his shoulder. I mean, you mentioned it. You're talking about a guy, you were saying his weights throughout those clips, from 399, 400, up to 430 pounds, if not bigger. He's doing moonsaults. He's in all these hard-hitting matches, and it's got to be so difficult to keep your body together going through something like this. Did you ever talk to Leon back then, or Vader back then, about his weight?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, getting too heavy. And it hurt his feelings. And he was sensitive. And that was just Leon. And the way I always discussed it with him was that, Leon, we're not going to have you for very long here if you don't get healthy. And that's going to be up to you. Stop doing some of the things that you're doing that you seemingly are hurting yourself on. How many times, I don't need to see Leon do a moonsault every time I see him on television. Once a year is fine. How's that? And what am I going to do then? Well, you're going to wrestle. You're going to hurt people. You're going to grab them in a hold. You're going to wear them down. You're going to grind and grind and grind and beat. And that's what you're going to do. And it's going to work out just fine. So I said many times when I brought Leon to WWE that we got him too late. I was going on my hope that he would have one run left and that we would get him he'd be a good monster heel to Shawn Michaels or guys like that. But his body was hurting. And like I said, I recruited him too late. If I had to do over again, even though Leon's in the Hall of Fame now, I would say, maybe we need to monitor his schedule better or whatever. But he was never the same. By the time he got to WWE, he wasn't the same guy because he was battling those injuries and they were nagging. And there were parts of his body that just being off a weekend or being off some house shows for a week or two wasn't going to cure. His body had started to deteriorate because of his immense size and what he did to his own self.
Well, JR, he would win the WCW title back from Ron Simmons on December 30th, 1992, but there was some controversy regarding that title change. I'm going to run through it here with you. On December 28th was Starrcade, and Vader had lost to Sting in the King of Cable Tournament Finals, and Simmons went to a double disqualification to Rude. The plan was for the next night in Philadelphia for Vader to regain the title and begin his program with Sting again, but Simmons missed the show. Bill Watts and the TV crew had gone to the show to film the title change in Philadelphia. What do you remember of all this? How much heat did Simmons have? Was he just not interested in dropping the title back to Vader? What can you tell us about that?
I think the main thing is that Ron thought that his opportunity came. He had earned that shot to be the champion, and his run was 2 weeks or whatever it was. Hardly nothing. I think that was Ron's issue, that he thought it was not very objective booking. And he may have been right. I think Leon with a longer run was a good thing, but Ron also had to realize that him beating Vader was the perfect thing for him to get himself over more to get to the next level. So it was just a philosophical difference of opinion, quite frankly.
Which happens a lot in wrestling, and we've seen it before, and we'll see it again. JR, in a crazy moment, it's crazy to talk about this, but your final match that you call for WCW, it's a Vader match. It's Vader versus Sting. It's Starrcade. It's the last pay-per-view singles match that you ever call for WCW. And
I'm going to start crying and get all emotional.
I know.
I did actually last week. Conrad, that bastard, slipped in my Hall of Fame stuff, the vignettes and the video and all that stuff. And it caught me off guard and kind of got me emotional because it was emotional for me because I gave a shit. I still give a shit. And it pisses me off to read online sometimes, JR's lost it. He doesn't have passion anymore. He doesn't sound like he used to sound. So I think primarily that's just a lot of younger fans that just like to make waves and make noise. Because my love for wrestling hasn't changed any. I don't want to do this job anymore. I'm tired of it. I don't have those days. So, that was how that worked out. But I didn't realize that was my last one. That's a good one to go out on.
It is, and your last appearance on WCW TV, as a matter of fact, is an interview with Vader and Harley. After Sting saved some enhancement talent from Vader and JR, I have that clip I want to share for you.
I bet you do.
Because I'm clip heavy today, baby. Here we go.
Good.
What's he got? Oh, he's got that paint. And again, it's a message to Sting. Definite psychological warfare. They want Sting to realize this is what's going to happen to him tomorrow. You can hear the crowd chanting. But in the meantime, Vader is lashing poor Chris Sullivan like an animal. Whipping him like a dog with that leather strap. Oh, man.
I think Leon wouldn't laying that stuff in.
Whatever moves.
God, no wonder they ran from the building.
Big Van Vader using that strap. Just like I'm sure he wants to do tomorrow night against Sting. Take the hide right off his body with a leather strap. The carnage again displayed, and here comes Sting. Sting is here. Vader on the outside. Oh, Sting ready to hook it up right here. Well, this is not the right time for Sting to do anything.
Here you are with your another duo, Larry Zbyszko.
Tomorrow night, and we'll be back. Don't go away. Tomorrow night is the night, ladies and gentlemen. Lights out, non-sanctioned, a strap match. What award's going to be, Harley Race?
Let me tell you something, Jim Ross, and let me tell you people out there. Stinger, if you've got illusions of grandeur in your mind, you think you're gonna take the world title from the greatest athlete on the face of this earth, you got another thing coming. You have to get by tomorrow night. Tomorrow night is going to be the ending of Sting's career. I managed the greatest athlete on the face of God's green earth. Take a look at him. Who's the man? Who's the heavyweight champion of the world? Who's the heavyweight champion of the world? Who's the man that has no fear and feels no pain? Stinger! Stinger! The Christmas holidays are over, brother. It's time to go back to school. And you're going to attend Vader's pain game. Pain game.
Leon's thinking such a say as he goes along.
Stinger,
I noticed.
what a leather strap can do in the hands of the right man. Brother, I'm gonna whip you like the dog that you are. And when I get done with the Vader powerbomb, I'm gonna drag you around to each four corners. And what you gonna do? Sting, what you gonna say when you're on your back, broke, in fear, and in pain? What you gonna say, Sting, when Big Van Vader asks you, who's the man? Who's the man? What you gonna say, Sting? Brother, you look at me, you look into my eyes. There is no pain, no pain, no pain, no pain, no pain, no pain.
Fans, the war is tomorrow night, and it's not sanctioned. Leather strap match. Let's go back up to the ring.
I think after that, you just flipped the mic and said, "I'm going to WWF."
No, I'm going to take a shower. As I said, Leon's sweat and he had like you could see his body glistening. Sometimes Leon's personal hygiene was less than recommended. I got on his ass one time about him not washing his gear, and I called his house and to talk to him because we're getting complaints and talents about his gear stinking. What he was doing, he was going home from the road and not unpacking his gear, just leaving his bag.
Oh.
So it wasn't being washed. It was not airing out.
So
It
bad.
stunk like death. And so some of the talents, Shawn Michaels is one of them, complaining about how they felt hideous after they'd worked with Leon because of the sweat and just his skin or something. I don't know what it was, but nonetheless, I called him and I said, Leon, you put me on a speakerphone in his house. I said, Leon, you got to start washing your gear, man. And he got all defensive and everything. And he said, I wash my gear. And I heard this voice in the background say, no, you don't. That was his wife.
Oh my goodness.
She was listening to the conversation and she busted him.
Oh, I love it.
So I remember more than one occasion, there's a product that's still out there on the shelves called Febreze. And so I'd have to send the Hebners after a can of Febreze to take Leon's gear and spray it down before a show sometimes to get him in the ring. He's just a dirt farmer, man. That's just him. But it wasn't working. Some of our talents, like Shawn and others, had issues.
I don't blame them.
They couldn't get the stink off of them after a match. So, but that's one of another of the personality traits of Leon. That's one of the things that made Leon unique, I guess.
It was funny how you said you can see him trying to think of the next words that he's going to say in his promo, and I'm thinking, man, this guy's promos. I think he and Sid must have gone to the same school for promos.
Well, that's why Harley was there a lot for that. Leon was not known for his oration, but he tried, but you could tell that we had no writers, So everybody go out there and do their thing. And I like that. I still think that's the way to do it. But it doesn't mean you're going to give a good promo because you thought of the lines yourself. It still doesn't make it great. It's no guarantee. Hey, folks, it's time to take your podcast game to the next level. And you certainly want to get your almighty push. My God, we have to have a push, right? We'll get that over to adfreeshows.com. Now, I'm telling you, if you're a fan of Grilling JR, adfreeshows.com has the entire episode library, and it's got no ads. 0 ads, zilch, none. Ad-free and on video starting at just $9. Did you hear what I said? $9. You spend more than that at Starbucks, for God's sakes. 2 mornings. If that's not all, folks, we got tons of bonus content, including my after-hours roundtable, where drinking was involved with Eric and Tony. You simply will not find a better value in all of wrestling. Hey, look, don't make me go red ass, because by God, you know I will. Hurry over to adfreeshows.com right now and sign up. And I thank you.
JR, you're out the door, as I said jokingly before, but you make your exit to WWF. Do you hear from him when you leave?
Yeah, some of the guys, sure. Yeah. Sorry you're leaving. Enjoyed working with you. All those good things. Other than that, not much. Wrestlers are not very sentimental. So, it's like Lawler used to say, one can't grieve forever. So off I went to my next assignment, and the rest is what it is.
Well, while you're in and out of the WWF and WCW, Vader is in and out of feuding with guys like Sid, Flair, Ray Traylor, who, by the way, was called the Boss, and then Hulk Hogan. Did you ever get a chance to watch any of the Hogan-Vader matches? I know you were so busy. I don't think you've said it before. You weren't sitting there watching too much of the other product.
I've seen some, I'm sure, but not religiously, because time restraints, and I didn't have they weren't streaming, and you didn't have access to that video as like you do now. But I kept track of it, and I was curious as to how Vader and Hogan were going to coexist, because Hogan was not going to be one that was going to tolerate more than one match with Leon if Leon stiffed him. This wasn't worth it, and I don't blame Hogan for that. By the way, you can't risk your fucking life over a pro wrestling match because somebody is taking liberties with you. It's not that important. Just think about what it is. It's performance art. And it's not to shorten your career or take you off the road where it's affecting your paycheck. Just isn't.
Well, JR, a big news occurred between Vader and when he gets fired, because an incident that happens between he and Paul Orndorff, and they get into the backstage fight. Did you hear about all of that and what went down there?
Just the same old wrestler bullshit. The story grows by each person that tells a story. They add something to it. I know that they had an altercation, and knowing Paul Orndorff for as long as I have had, he was not somebody you take lightly. He'll fight you to drop a hat, and he did. And so he and Leon had a little skirmish. I don't, it depending on who all was there. Everybody's got a version of that story, because wrestlers like to embellish. You notice that? Like to embellish. And that's kind of what happened there. It was an embellished story, and I don't think it was quite as drastic as people let on, but I wasn't there. But I heard all about it from those that were, and it seems to be inevitable, because Orndorff had no time for, Leon would be a bully at times. And if you let him get away with it, he's going to continue to be a bully until you stand up and assert yourself. And Paul Orndorff certainly did do that.
Well, JR, he's now no longer in WCW. He's officially, I guess what you call a free agent. How does it all work? What all takes place? What transpires? What's the communication look like for him to them and eventually land in the WWF?
Well, he's got to get healthy, Paul. I mean, goddamn, we've talked about this ad nauseum. He needs to get healthy, and he needs to lose some goddamn weight, so he doesn't lose that the great gift of quickness he had for a super heavyweight. So, but promoters are all creatures of habit. Nobody was going to let Leon flounder out there if you had a chance to get him and see if there's a little bit left of that juice on the vine. And I think that's kind of what Vince is looking at. I told Vince, I said, if we get him healthy and he put in the right person, a manager, I think Cornette was his manager. He was great, quite frankly. But I said we can get a little something out of him. I thought we might get one. I thought the same thing about Steve Williams. I thought Dr. Death could have one run with Austin, and it'd be a new opponent for Austin, and somebody that theoretically could beat Steve. I thought the same thing about in this situation here with these guys with Leon. Maybe one run with Shawn, because Leon was going to be heavy-handed, and Shawn didn't like to work that heavy, and so you knew there's going to be issues there at some point in time. But Leon got over as a monster heel, and he was the perfect opponent for Shawn. Shawn was 200 pounds. Leon was 400 pounds. And Shawn could make anybody look good, and he made Leon look really good.
So you and Vince, you've talked about it. You're all in. You want to bring in Vader. You think he has a good run left in him, it sounds like. And is it true? There's a rumor that went around as well that Vince wanted to change his name from Vader to Mastodon. Do you remember that?
Well, I remember we started calling him the Mastodon, but just a synonym or a way to it was nothing more than a descriptor. I don't think he ever went as far as he wanted to change his name to Mastodon. That's good dirt shit, though. You like that stuff. You like the dirt, and you do, and you can't help yourself. You get a fucking twinkle in your eye every time you can zig somebody a little bit with that dirt. But I don't think he was. I don't think we had any thoughts of changing his name, because there's too much equity built up in that name already, and then putting Cornette with him was the cherry on the sundae.
We like the dirt here, JR. We like the dirt.
I know you guys, your generation you're obsessed. You're obsessed.
You mentioned it already. You said Vader got to the WWF with some injuries, some wear and tear already, but he debuts at the Rumble. He's promoted. Jim Cornette's put with him, which you mentioned. You have to like it, though, right? He's with Harley in WCW. It just makes sense having that mouthpiece of Jim.
He had to have it.
Yeah.
He had to have it. Because, again, if he left to his own devices, you heard that one promo he did.
Yeah.
You want that to be your count on that? I mean, it's not a problem letting Leon speak, but he speaks in sound bites and seldom and infrequently. That's what you're looking for in that scenario.
Well, he has made his debut. It's the Rumble. Vader makes his way in. He eliminates Jake Roberts, Doug Gilbert, the Samoans SWAT team, which is the Headhunters, Savio Vega, before being eliminated while tangled up with Yokozuna in the ropes from a super kick by Shawn Michaels. Man, you got to love the hot start for Leon here, right into the Royal Rumble. Yeah,
fans were ready to see him too. They were waiting. He wasn't a stranger. He had a ton of national television exposure, all in good light. I mean, if you start measuring losses by the success, your career is based on your one-loss record, then you're mixing metaphors. You can wins count in a Super Bowl. Wins count. In pro wrestling, execution counts. And so what if you have, this guy's he's won 30 matches. Well, what if you beat the same guy, the same skill set 30 times? It means nothing. So, but Leon, I thought, was booked to have a good start. And he did have, like you mentioned, Paul, he did have a good start.
The juice was behind him, man. It was.
The money for Leon was his issue with Monsoon. That's what kind of separated from the pack, quite frankly.
And that's exactly where I was headed. It's the next night. It's that infamous angle where Vader attacks Monsoon. You said it. It's twofold angle. It gives Vader some major heel heat. It gives Gorilla some time off. But, man, the execution, JR, was tremendous.
Yeah, nobody had touched Monsoon. Monsoon was the holy grail. Beloved. Bigger than life figure, great respect, Hall of Fame guy, and a Hall of Fame human being, more importantly, was Gorilla Monsoon, Bob Morella. And, but he'd been untouched. He was clean. And so when Leon did his business, I was shocked that it even happened. I was shocked that Gorilla went for it. I think Gorilla had to lay it out, what he could take physically. And because you just never knew Leon could do something normal, like throw somebody in the turnbuckle, then follow them in and do the big Vader leap on them. And you see it a zillion times. It hurt. He's fucking 400 pounds. You know, it hurt. And you got an older gentleman like Gorilla, who's not in great health anyway. You worry about everything they're going to do. But that was Monsoon being a real trooper and a pro. So Leon always would have always owed. Maybe in heaven right now they've made up, and they're cool again. So.
That's a beautiful thought.
Yeah.
Well, his first program seems to be that it's going to be Yokozuna and then eventually Shawn Michaels for SummerSlam. And Vader does work when he returns from his shoulder surgery with Yokozuna. What was your whole thoughts with Vader and Yokozuna? I mean, Yokozuna is massive at this point.
Wasn't crazy about it because the match was limited as to what they could do. First of all, the match, if it went past 10 minutes, you're flirting with disaster. Secondly, there are only a few things that they could do with each other. And also, Yoko had gotten so heavy, and Leon was same, not quite as obese, but he still would need to drop a lot of pounds for his own personal health. And I know, but as far as booking, if you're a booker and you're looking for an attraction match that's going to get everybody talking, that match will do it. I just didn't think for the product, what you're going to be able to deliver to the audience based on how you promote a Yoko versus Vader match is going to fall greatly short of what they expect because the hype always exceeded the actual application.
Yeah. What we as fans would hope to see, it was going to be tough because of the shape Yoko was in, to your point, and exactly how long are they going to be able to go with each other in the ring at this point?
Well, the longer you make them work, the longer you set at the time, the more chances you take on somebody getting hurt. Fatigue, you lose your grip, you lost your timing. I hit him in the face, I didn't mean to, that type of thing. So there's a lot of things that go into the equation of when you lay out a match like that. But going in, it's going to be the guys are limited on what they can do with each other. Now you put Leon with Shawn Michaels, you wipe the board clean and you start all over. But Shawn could work with anybody and make them look phenomenal, which he did Leon, quite frankly.
Well, Jim, we're moving on to WrestleMania 12, which you and I just covered a few weeks back, and it's Vader, Owen Hart, and Davey Boy Smith defeating Ahmed Johnson, Jake Roberts, and Yokozuna in the opening match. It's not how you would originally envision Vader's first WrestleMania, I wouldn't say, right, Jim?
Well, if you're looking for a big singles match, no. But he's surrounded by stars. And the opening match on a pay-per-view especially is a plum position. It's where you want to be if you can get it. If you can't close, open. And most guys that had experience in that world will tell you that exact same thing. If I can't close the show, I want to open it.
Well, speaking of big matches, Vader would get the win over Razor Ramon. That's right, Scott Hall, in Razor's last pay-per-view appearance on TV for the WWF before he leaves for WCW. Is this considered a big deal at the time to have Vader, the guy who just came from WCW, go over the guy who's going to WCW?
It did for you dirt guys. It was a big deal.
I'm a dirt guy. I love it. I'm a dirt guy.
It's no. All that WCW and WW, that's just another, it's just a tangent, something to talk about that meant shit. Didn't mean anything. To me, you got one guy going for a great job and leaving WWE and talking about Scott, and here comes Leon. But Leon's reputation was also enhanced by his work in Japan as much as maybe his work in WCW. So I don't think that WCW element really played a part of anything other than it was good cannon fodder for the dirt sheet guys.
Well, listen, Vader, he must have found himself in the outhouse or something, because he starts putting the Ultimate Warrior over on all the house shows in the spring of '96. Did he get in trouble? Was he on timeout? What happened here? We
want to get great wins. We want to get great wins for Warrior because Vince still believed in Warrior. And Leon was not losing any weight. I'm crying about this here, Paul. You got to work with me.
Yeah.
he's not losing any weight. He's not doing what he's asked to do. He's not getting healthier. So how committed to your job are you if you won't even try to go on a diet and lose some weight? I think I sent him and
To Duke,
Yoko,
right?
to Duke.
Yeah.
And not even Coach K could get him on a diet.
Right.
I got my first report back from the Duke Medical Center, and they gained weight that first week.
You said they were out getting chicken, right?
They're sneaking out and getting chicken.
Oh.
So there's your discipline. So you're down there on the company dime. We're trying to get you healthier so we can extend your life, not your career, your life.
Yeah.
And Yoko was on the verge of being unlicensable.
My goodness.
If that's a word. He just didn't.
Yeah, couldn't even get licensed to perform.
And then when that happens in one state, one athletic commission, normally all the others follow suit.
My goodness.
And all of a sudden now you can't get a talent license to go wrestle. So now what do we do with you? And that's kind of where we were with those two guys. Patience is running thin.
I only ask that because on June 9th here, speaking of dirt, in Chicago, the Observer reports this. I'm going to read this to you. The Vader Warrior story went like this. This is from Dave Meltzer. They had done 20-second squashes all weekend, somewhat because Vader had a bad hip and more because Warrior's shoulder is messed up. I guess because the crowd was big or because Hellwig was unappreciative or because all the pins are getting so much press in Japan or whatever, Vader took his clotheslines and then walked out. As he got to the back, officials basically told him if he didn't walk back in, he might as well walk all the way back to Colorado and not come back.
Damn right.
He got back in the ring and did the match, but ended up walking out again for the count out rather than the pin. Right now, there are no plans to push him until the fall, and they want to help him drop weight first. Exactly what you said, JR.
Ding, ding, ding.
But they did allow him to do a double count out on June 14th in Denver since it's his hometown, and lots of football players that he had coached that were there or coached at Colorado last season were in attendance, but he did jobs at all the other shows. And this just proves your point. It's the weight loss, and he's just not getting it done, man.
Commitment. We needed to see more of it, and we weren't seeing any of it.
What is Vince? I mean, Vince obviously is on the same page with.
We're trying to keep Leon a job, Paul.
Yeah.
And it's really simple. I mean, either you're in or you're out. And Leon's conduct and his mannerisms, his weight specifically, told us he wasn't in. He wasn't all in, and he was getting paid a lot of money. We took good care of Leon, and paid him well. But you want something back in return. It's got to be reciprocal. You know, you get what you sow. You reap what you sow in this world, in many areas, including this.
Well, you got his body breaking down. He's abusing himself with food. Are you starting to talk about, hey, I know we're talking about putting him in the top heel spot against Sean, but maybe we don't. Is that going on right now at this point?
Oh, yeah. Period? Can we rely on him? I said many times on these podcasts here at Grill and JR that the best trait you can have as a talent is to be reliable. And Leon at times was not reliable because of injuries and his weight.
It happens anyway. It's Vader, it's Sean. They're positioned against each other. When Vader pins Sean in a 6-man main event at In Your House International Incident, did you know, JR, at this point that Sean and Vader didn't exactly see eye to eye in the ring? Or was that Vader and Sean clashing? Or did Cornette have something to do with it? Talk to us about what you're hearing about these two.
Well, how could they get along? You got two egomaniacs. And, you know, Sean's going to get his way. It ain't going to be, well, what are you going to do between Sean and Vader? Well, it's real easy. We're trying to make Sean happy. That's what Vince wanted. That was the right thing for business. And until Leon could tell us or show us that he was making a commitment to get in better shape and to be a real strong teammate, because we always believe that Leon could be an influence in the locker room. He's been in locker rooms all his life. He knows what it's like to be a vital part of a locker room because he's a football background. He fit in Japan pretty well. Of course, he was drawing a lot of money there for those guys. So he's getting a break here, there, and yon. But I thought that the monster heel and the smaller baby face was magical. it's going to work.
It worked for, and you hope as a fan, it worked for Sting and Vader, and you would hope that you could capture that magic again with Shawn and Vader. It just didn't happen.
Yeah, it's just, well, Shawn was hard to work with at times from a psychological standpoint. He liked things his way, and he knew he had Vince in his corner. He was going to get his way. So that's a no-brainer. Leon, it's like I told him, you can't buck City Hall. The smart thing for you to do is just make all this money and save it. And because you don't know when your next check's coming. I know that sounds a little bit drastic and a little bit shocking, but it's the truth. And sometimes wrestlers need to hear the truth. You got to change. And you're not going to change the system. Vince is not going to jump off the Shawn Michaels horse to saddle up you. It's not going to do it. And Leon might not. I don't understand that as well. Someday when we have a lot more time, I'll explain it to you. All I'm telling you right now is, at the end of the day, cool it on you and Shawn. Do your business, make it look like $1 million like you can, and move on. It's real simple. Don't overcomplicate a pro wrestling match.
Vader does get his main event moment, JR. It's SummerSlam 96, and it just does not go well. He's working on top against Shawn for the WWF title. You got Vader being out of position for an elbow drop that sees Shawn just land on his feet from the top rope and stomp on Vader's head. It goes to a DQ finish, and Vader's main event push ends right there. It goes right down the toilet. The story is that Vader's supposed to win the title from Shawn at Survivor Series 96 to drop it back to him at the Rumble in his hometown, but that spot goes to Sid, as we all know. Is he just telling Vince, hey, this just isn't working for me, brother?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Essentially. And he has plenty of ammunition to back it up. He's hurt. He hurts me. He's not as quick as he was. He's missing his spots. He blows up. He stinks. It takes me 2 or 3 days to get the stink off my body from working with him.
Right.
Then you work with him again. He didn't wash his gear between the last time you worked with him. Things like that just show that Leon's, I'm going to have my way whether you guys like it or not. So
just not a good attitude.
No, not a good attitude whatsoever. And it could have been so much better, so much different if he had wanted it to be.
And the upcoming December pay-per-view is even named for him. It's called It's Time, and it's Sid versus Brett in the main event. And it just seems like at this point, though, JR, he's lost his confidence maybe a little bit. Vince has definitely lost his confidence, it sounds like, in Vader.
Yeah. Well, he had a right to doubt him. Again, Leon wasn't doing anything to help himself. Little things that you could control, because a wrestler can control only so much. And the things that Leon could control, he wasn't. And he gets frustrating. I get frustrating talking about it on this show.
I can feel it. There is an attempt. There's an attempt to get him back going again. He's put with Paul Bearer when Bearer helps Vader score a big one-on-one win over Taker at the 97 Rumble, Jim. Taker doesn't lose a lot at all during this time to people. And I guess it's one of those things. Taker just seems willing to help Vader out as far as this. And I got the clip, Jim, and I'm going to play it for you. Let's check it out. This is Vader and Undertaker, Royal Rumble 97. Here we go.
Watch this. Watch this now. The Undertaker. What's he going to do?
He's leaving.
No, I don't think so. Look out, here comes the Undertaker. And, oh, no! He impaled himself on the railing. Paul Bearer
To the rescue.
Right out of the way.
Paul Bearer to the rescue.
The Undertaker's sternum struck the security railing, and now the man from the dark side has found himself even in more trouble. Paul Bearer is back in the ring. You got to believe the reason there's no disqualification a while ago when Paul Bearer came in the ring is that the Undertaker brought Paul Bearer there, brought him in.
And the Undertaker may have inflicted severe damage to himself. No, Paul Bearer with all of his weight right across the Undertaker,
Yikes.
jamming that urn into the back of his head.
He hurt himself worse.
Paul sacrificing his own body to do the Undertaker.
That's quite a sacrifice.
And the Undertaker is
He's around
in
his
big time
ass.
trouble. And Paul Bearer, look at the dent in that urn.
William Moody.
From the back of the head of the Undertaker.
Look at the dent in Undertaker's head.
And, Vader now.
Here comes a famous Vader bomb.
Vader trying to counter.
Everybody's got one nowadays.
Vader bomb. Yes. That's enough.
The Vader bomb has defeated the Undertaker. And Vader and Paul Bearer are leading
there goes that
arm
suit.
in arm.
Paul Bearer and Vader.
Look at that. That could be a match made in heaven or hell or somewhere else.
There it is, JR.
That's Vince and King and JR on that one.
It's
That's
another
fun.
it's another tandem. Every clip I have, another tandem with JR.
I worked with a lot of different people.
You
So
really
JR
did.
must have been hard to work with. No, I was just the opposite. I was easy to work with. That's why so many guys got a pass at that role. Undertaker showing that his character and his integrity is bigger than the game. You know, him going to the Hall of Fame was, you could always say it's overdue. It probably was. He could have gone to the Hall of Fame 20 years ago. But that's just his integrity and his character. Leon beat Taker with no questions asked. It had some finality to it, and there wasn't a banana peel or whatever. I mean, I know the urn was used earlier, but the way that the pin went down eventually was just Vader's power and size overwhelming the dead man.
Which is good. Okay, now it looks like, okay, we're doing something now. We're trying again with Vader. The last pay-per-view Vader would ever be a part of in the main event is at Final Four, when Shawn Michaels vacates the title and a 4-man battle royal takes place between the last four in the Royal Rumble. We've talked about this. It's in the archives. It's Vader, Taker, Brett, and Austin. Vader's role in this match is well remembered due to him getting that gruesome cut above his eye, and he bled all over the place. Hart eventually wins, but it's a good showing for Vader. And I know we're all cheering for him at this point. We're hoping he can find his way back, right?
Right. Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
His money. You put everything back together. Check your goddamn boxes that I'm tired of talking about, to be honest with you. And he's fine. But you never know if you're going to get there. We knew what we needed to do. We knew what was wrong. It wasn't a mystery. It didn't take a booking committee or even the genius of Vince McMahon to figure that out. We got a diamond in the rough here if we were just getting right. And that was what was hard.
Vader's in the mid-card for a while. He's teaming with Mankind at WrestleMania 13 to take on Owen and Davey Boy for the tag team titles. And then he's detained in Kuwait for an incident during a live TV episode with a host that asked Vader if wrestling was fake. Take us through this one, JR. When do you hear about it, and how does this all...
Well, sure, I heard about it soon after it happened because we had people on the ground there that was communicating with us every day, and I booked that card, and Leon was a big part of it because he got so much TV exposure, and primarily in a good sense. But he just he just made a stupid decision. You're in a foreign country. You play by their rules. You take care of their people. You don't do what Leon did, and it was inexcusable. He's lucky that he got out of there. It's much like that Brittany Griner thing.
Yes.
Assuming she's still in Russia. You don't do shit like that where you break another country's rules. And Leon could have been charged with assault or all kinds of stuff, that it might be a stretch to some people listening now. But he got out of there by the skin of his teeth, quite frankly. And that was some good stuff. Jerry Briscoe was instrumental in making sure that we got the big son of a gun back to the States.
He makes it back to the States, and then he's used as the person to get Ken Shamrock over as a badass. It's Vader and Ken Shamrock, and they have a memorable moment in late April of 97 when Shamrock saves you from Vader.
I didn't need his help, by the way. But anyway,
we're going to check it out in our final clip of the week, and we saved the best for last, JR, in my opinion. Here it goes. This is a fun one.
Advantage of people. Look at it. He's got this one. You think he's going to pin Jesse James now? Only if he feels like.
And finally, showing a little mercy here, which is more than what we can say he showed to that poor Kuwaiti national, the broadcaster, who quite frankly was scared to death.
Well, I'm not scared to ask you some questions. That's what I'm going to do. What are you doing, Ross? Look at me. What are you doing? What's he doing?
Jim Ross going up to grab a word with the man they call Vader.
Well, now he's got to be the stupidest man in Omaha.
I can tell you this, JR will be confrontational.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask you a couple of questions, if you don't mind. Everybody knows the ordeal you've gone through in Kuwait. I just want to know if you have any remorse, if you have any shame for the embarrassment that you put your family through, you put the WWF through, you put all these fans through. I don't care if they like you or not. You've embarrassed a lot of people. You have any remorse? Do you feel ashamed of yourself?
Let me tell the whole world, one time, once and for all, I went to Kuwait to do a job, and I happened to do my job very, very well, and that's beat up people.
Nothing wrong with that.
So as far as remorse or regrets, I'm going to say it to you one last time. I apologize for nothing.
Stinky.
I apologize to no one.
All right, the second question, if you have the moment here. As long as you've been in professional wrestling, I'm sure you've been asked a zillion times if wrestling is fake or not. Now, I'm not going to ask you that question because I don't agree with the question. But don't you think you overreacted just a little bit when this guy in Kuwait asked you somewhat of a stupid question?
Is Ross nuts or what?
Hey, Big Mouth, you know what? I can finish that interview that I started over in Kuwait with you right here and right now.
That wouldn't be advisable.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, look at this
guy,
man.
What are you, a big tough guy from Oklahoma? Is that what you are?
I'm doing my job. I'm asking questions. That's all I'm
You're out
doing.
here acting like an idiot. I'm not out here to be insulted by you or anybody. Not by him, not by you, not by the WWF, and certainly not by all these spoonheads out in the audience.
I'm just doing my job, asking a question. Don't you think you overreacted?
And I'm telling you that you're stupid and you need...
I don't need that, I'll tell you that.
You need, maybe, or me...
Hey, you're ruining my clothes.
To finish off what I started in Kuwait. Maybe that's what you need.
No, I don't need...
Maybe that's exactly...
Now look at this, McMahon.
Your glasses are ruined.
Look at this.
All right. Hey, come on. Hey, come on.
Hold on.
Wait a minute, Kid Shamrock. No. Shamrock's in there. Shamrock now.
Uh-oh. Well, that's a big old belly-to-belly right there.
Shamrock. Watch Vader.
JR, ready to mix it up with Vader.
Yeah, right. I did my role. I knew my role, baby. And Leon's, he was a character. You know, he just that was probably one of the better interviews Leon did.
That was fun
because it's conversational. He didn't have to lead the conversation. So different light, different way of producing them, different presentation. You just got to find the right formula that's going to make these guys step up. And that little piece of business right there, because it was all about Leon until Kenny got there. Leon loved, and it was just conversational. And he and I had such a good rapport that he was comfortable, I think is one way of putting it simplistically.
We have one thing we've proven here today, JR, is how you have been weaved through Vader's career, all the way from WCW and some of those epic moments for him and personally his career, calling that action, to now the last clip we showed this week and him getting a little bit of physical with you. You've been there for it all, man. Everything that we talked about. So I think
I'm proud of it, Paul. I said a lot of things on the show that some in the Vader camp may have taken inflammatorily. But I thought the world of Leon. You know, I helped Leon get 2 great jobs. You know, one in Atlanta and one in Connecticut. So I never had any issues. I always saw big money. I was always more frustrated with Leon than anything. I wasn't ever really mad at him. I was frustrated that there are things he could have done better that he refused to do. and it shortened his career. It shortened his lifespan in WWE. And you just don't, you can't be a constant problem to Vince and it work out for you long term. It's just common sense will tell you that.
Well, JR, he gets back in the title picture at Canadian Stampede against The Undertaker. And by the way, you can check that show out way back in the archives. It was episode 12 of Grilling JR. The Taker gets the win, and Vader's chances of titles end up disappearing. Now, Jim Cornette has said on many occasions that it was the booking that failed Vader. What do you say?
Well, I can concur with that. I think booking had something to do with Leon start, stop. And that's just a matter of communication. I've said that on this show a lot. You got to be a great communicator, especially in today's world. And Leon just, I don't think the booking served him amazingly well. So I'm not going to disagree with Cornette on that point. But Leon also, steal a cliche from another time, Leon screwed Leon. The booking was not ideal, but I don't think the booking is what put a bullet in his heart whatsoever. I think Leon did that himself.
Well, Vader is used to get another new character over in early 98 when Kane defeats him at No Way Out and hits him with the gigantic wrench to put him on the shelf. He'd return at Unforgiven for his revenge during Kane's Inferno match with The Undertaker helping cause his loss. This is settled in a mask versus mask match at Over the Edge when Kane gains the victory. But what many may remember is afterwards, what feels like a shoot promo, it would take place with Michael Cole and Vader as he exit the ring. And there's no video clip here. There was a rough one on YouTube if you want to find it and look it up. But at the end of the interview, JR, he says, "I'm nothing but just a fat piece of shit." And he knocks the microphone out of Cole's hand and walks off. Was that just what Vader really thought of himself, you think, at this time?
Oh, I think that's what he thought. Others thought of it. I don't think he thought of himself as a fat piece of shit. I think he thought everybody else did, and he didn't like it. So do something about it. It's called weight loss. Get in shape. You'll execute better. You'll execute more safely, and you'll extend your career. Those are all good reasons to change your philosophy of how you work a little bit. So, no, I think Leon thought that's how he was perceived in WWE. A fat piece of shit, and that's not true.
Yeah, his career definitely here is winding down. He loses the Bradshaw at In Your House breakdown in a no-holds-barred match, and in his final match puts over Edge on Sunday Night Heat before the parting of the ways. Do you remember how that all went down, him leaving the WWF at this point?
We had done everything we could. We threw our hands up. We couldn't. There's no more that we could do with Leon under the current terms and conditions. And so, and luckily for him, he was... he still had his relationship with Japan, if nothing else, for a one-off here or there. Paydays were waiting on him. He was lucky to have that, and I'm glad that he did. But, we'd tried everything. And so if it was, in Corny's estimation, it was a booking calamity of errors, which would not have been new, then so be it. That's Corny's opinion. But Leon, I've always said, could look himself in the mirror and figure out what was wrong. It's you. And until you are willing to change for the better, this problem can't solve itself. And so it's like, I've said this before, it sounds callous and cold. If you can't solve a problem in wrestling, you have to eliminate it. Or you can let it linger and be like a fungus. And, you want a fungus-free locker room if you get it, which is very challenging, by the way. We'd run out of things that we felt good about doing with Leon. That's all. That's best way I could put it in a nutshell.
And to your point earlier, JR, you said it. He did have some money waiting for him over at All Japan, and for Pro Wrestling Noah, had a little bit of a resurgence over there, so that was good to see. Again, making that money. He did make a couple of appearances in 2005 for the WWE. But what I remember him for is when he got to induct Stan Hansen into the Hall of Fame in 2016. And then we would also know that in the later years, after he was diagnosed with heart failure, he actively campaigned to be inducted into the Hall of Fame before he passed away. Sadly, he didn't get in while he was still alive, and he was just inducted this past weekend. But this type of stuff, what do you think of that? I know you said it before when you and I did the show. You were really hoping he would have been able to get inducted when he was still with us.
You say that about so many guys, quite frankly, and he's certainly one of the guys at the top of that list. He had earned the right, in my humble opinion, to be in the Hall of Fame, and it just didn't come about in a timely way. It's sad. He was rejoiced in being inducted. He would rejoiced in being able to tell his story, and it would have been an interesting acceptance speech, to say the least. But I'm glad he finally got in. He's going to be remembered as a Hall of Famer, as he should.
Well, JR, before we go to the fan questions, final favorite memories of Leon White, the man.
Oh, Leon was a complex guy in a lot of ways, but in some ways he was a very simplistic, straightforward person. He was a big guy that always had issues justifying his look, his appearance. He was one of those guys that was self-conscious to some degree, and had been, I'm thinking, all his life, because he was always looked at as a big, overweight, large human being. And the fact that he could manhandle people because of his ridiculous, crazy strength was, got him over, so to speak. But I'll have fond memories of Leon. He was fun. He was frustrating. Sometimes I'd just be angry as hell at him for a few minutes. And then you just shake your head. So I got to solve this problem. I got to work on Leon. But it's one of those frustrating things where we did all we could do. Vince did all he could do. Vince's commitment was paying Leon a lot of money. And Leon never missed any checks. He was getting that money like clockwork. So, but I'm glad that he's finally in the Hall of Fame. He's, again, deserving. Wish it had happened earlier, obviously. But I'll always, the only thing I'll ever say about Vader, I wish I would have signed him earlier in his career. If we'd have signed him earlier in his career, where he had his weight more under control and was more healthy, then his legacy would be something entirely different than it is today. I look at him as a superstar, but he has so many false starts and stops, start, stop. And I think that may be what Corny was referring to as far as booking is concerned, the start and stop scenario of that.
All right, JR, let's go to the fan questions, and we start with my good friend, my old buddy, Adam Arpin, and he says, JR, were there ever any discussions of getting Vader back in the Mastodon helmet in WWF? That presentation seemed right up their alley.
Don't recall. He's talking about that head he wore.
That headpiece, yeah.
It was just a pain in the ass to take around, and you had to travel with it separately, and it had to be boxed up, and in other words, it wasn't practical. You needed a crew to carry the head around, and special travel considerations. So the answer to that question, Adam, would be no.
All right, up next, Matt Guerra. He said, how did Vader feel being sent to Duke for weight loss? Did he think Jim or the WWF was against him? I can remember an episode of Raw where Jim said on commentary that Vader was not in tip-top physical condition.
Yeah, and I didn't lie. What's your point? Matt. Well, yeah, he didn't like it. He's getting paid. That's another thing some of the boys forget to tell you. Oh, yeah, by the way, I went to Duke to get healthier and save my life so I could live longer, so I wouldn't have heart issues and all these other things. And I'm getting paid. Never missed a check. So, yeah, he didn't like it, didn't understand it. Thought the boys would make fun of him again. Or they did or they didn't. I didn't hear that story. Yokozuna certainly wasn't made fun of because he was so popular, unlike Leon in the locker room. So, no, he wasn't pleased with it. But I guess we didn't do a good job of trying to explain to those guys who both died of weight-oriented issues. Okay? And they didn't listen. We predicted what was going to happen. And they looked at it as an insult and not concern.
Next question is Todd Adams, JR, and he said, would you have booked Vader to beat Shawn Michaels at SummerSlam 96?
Oh, gosh, I had to go back and look at how it all fit together. at any point in time when the story fit comfortably, Leon beating Shawn would have made some sense. And there you have the same thing he had when Shawn went to San Antonio to fight Sid. You got the small baby face, underdog, blah, blah, blah. And any time along that journey, a win over Shawn would have helped Sid. It would have helped Vader, and it would have given Shawn a great goal to chase his title and get it back against this big monster bully.
Ad-free shows enhancement talent Richard Smith asks, how was your experience with Vader's son? Did Vader have any input or influence, and why do you think it didn't work out for him?
Jesse, Leon's son, is a great kid, still is. I think the world of him. Good-looking kid. I used to ask Leon. Leon looked at me sternly. I said, "Did you guys adopt that boy? Because he sure is good-looking." Great kid. He was a 5-star high school offensive lineman. Played center like his dad. 5-star. That's the highest you can get, folks. If you're not a college or high school football fan or recruiting fan or whatever. That's the best rating you can get is 5 stars. And so he had committed to UCLA, where Leon went. Was committed to go. He ended up in Colorado, as we talked about. So he came to Oklahoma to visit because Leon had lost his driver's license. Jesus Christ, Leon, can you make this more difficult? So they fly into Oklahoma City. I pick them up, take them down to Norman, hand them off to the coaches. And during that weekend visit, the kid flipped his commitment and went from UCLA to OU. He had injury issues, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, it had to do with his hips and being. He lost a lot of his. He was losing flexibility, and a lot of that was true to do him lifting heavy weights at a very young age. Because Leon had Jesse lifting weights when Jesse was just a kid. I mean, a young kid, and lifting heavy, which is not recommended. And I think it took a toll on his joints. And so Jesse ended up at Oklahoma getting a medical hardship. He had a scholarship, 4 years. He graduated, but he couldn't play. He couldn't pass the physical after those series of events. So, but he's a great kid, and I think the world of him. I think he lives in the Dallas area, and a good young man, really good young man.
Up next, adfreeshows.com, Slapnut Justin Mouton, and he says, JR, if Vader had went to WWF earlier, which you had talked about around 1991, would he have had a Yokozuna type of heel run or just gotten beat by Hogan's leg drop?
Well, if he's a heel, and he's a top heel, he's going to get beat by Hogan's leg drop. Hello. Like everybody else. Why fuck with the formula? Why make an exception for one guy? That would not have worked. But yeah, he probably would have had a monster heel run, whatever you would term a monster heel, and how you define that and bracket that is probably what he would have been. But at the end of the day, when it got in the main event time and he was working with Hogan, the leg drop's going to catch up with you. And that's just, and I don't have no issues with that. I don't know how anybody could really.
3 more questions this week, JR. Bryant Haremza, top guy at AFS. When Vader comes into WWF, he attacks Monsoon, an attack that I can still remember watching as a kid. Was there ever any thought to having Gorilla come back and be a manager or corner man for someone to go after Vader for attacking him?
Monsoon's health was really failing. And that's why we were also concerned about what he originally did with Leon, to get Gorilla back and to do more things, to be more physically active. And another role was never discussed to any serious degree whatsoever. Just would not have made any sense. And quite frankly, physically, he couldn't have done it.
Adfreeshows.com Slapnut. Jeff, not the former Titans coach, Fisher, asks, I remember Vader appearing on an episode of the sitcom Boy Meets World. Do you have any memories of coordinating this? My father and I watched this show for the first and only time due to the Vader appearance.
Well, I wasn't that involved with it. It's just, I think that may have come through Turner. I'm not sure, but they were looking to cast a guy in a role, and Leon fit the part. Obviously, big. He's no question. He was a wrestler, and he's big and loud and boisterous. So he was a because easily considered a bad guy, and that's what he was. So, but I think it went on pretty smoothly. I think Leon may have realized that this is a great opportunity for him. Don't screw it up. Don't go in there and act like you're John Wayne and you're going to call the shots, because you're just you got a bit part here, a one-off, and make the most of your opportunity. And I think he did. I've heard a lot of people say, I didn't watch that show much, but I watched the episode with Leon or Vader, and he did a good job, and he did a good job with that.
He did. Our final question, dude, I'm telling you, JR, this helmet, the headpiece was over as guys my age watching wrestling back then. And it's Brian Fuller, my Push member. And he said, I've heard that Vader didn't want to travel with the large helmet that he had in WCW, but I think that reintroducing it in a more theatrical WWF when he debuted would have helped get him over. I was a huge fan of the smoking helmet and really did think that Vince would have loved it. Although we all know he had never seen it on TBS.
So you got a dirt sheet guy's got to get this little dig here there at the end. You notice that? Oh yeah. Well, we got to get McMahon here. Great opportunity to stick it right up his ass. Good job, Brian. Look, I don't know how heavy the thing was, but it was a monstrosity to get from city to city. In Japan, they had a big crew. They had shorter trips. The trips are different. A lot of it was by train or bus. So it was a lot easier. And it seemed like maybe Vince may have thought that that's a Japan thing, and that was married to them and not to us. But I didn't have any problem with the helmet. It's just the logistics of moving it around and having it at every city and having a tech on hand and all that became too high maintenance, too costly in that respect. So is it a bad idea that he didn't have the helmet? No, it's not. It'd been a good idea if we could have pulled it off on a consistent basis. Maybe just at pay-per-views or something like that might have worked. But that's already not Vince's style. If you're going to use it on pay-per-views, you should use it everywhere to make it feel main event-ish. And but it just never came to fruition.
Well, JR, that wraps up the fans' questions for this week. But, man, it doesn't end there, because next week it's Ask JR Anything. That's right. It's JR's turn to be red ass with all of you, just like I get every time I record with him. So throw your questions in, and we're going to have some fun, whether it's me or Conrad. It's Ask JR Anything. Line it up, kids, because it's going to be a can't-miss episode. And then in 2 weeks, you'll be discussing Backlash 2002. It's the final pay-per-view under the WWF name, the first pay-per-view after the infamous brand split draft. You got Brock Lesnar's debut, Scott Hall's final WWE pay-per-view match, Eddie Guerrero and Rob Van Dam battle for the Intercontinental title. You get Hogan in the red and yellow taking on Triple H for the title. You get Taker and Austin. My God, Ric Flair's the special guest referee. JR, that's a loaded show.
Loaded show, yeah, and it should be fun to talk about. A lot of great memories in those. That amazing array of talent that was there. I like these fan question shows.
Yeah,
I enjoy interacting. I enjoy interacting with the fans and so forth. You know, I'm doing a big autograph thing in Liverpool, April 23rd and 24th, and it's got one of the most amazing lineups of talent. I know that I'm looking forward to seeing Tori Wilson and Trish and Lita. I think the Steiners are booked on it.
Wow. Hall of Famers.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good line. So I had done an appearance for probably 2 years, COVID issues and so forth. Little thing called cancer. Kind of took a lot of time out. So that's going to be over there, and we'll be talking about it more. Follow me on social at JRSBBQ on Twitter. But it's going to be in Liverpool, April the 23rd, 24th. I believe that's the right dates. That's the weekend. So I'm excited about seeing a lot of old friends, and a lot of fans. It should be a hell of a turnout because, like I said, I know coming off the heels of WrestleMania and all that stuff, where Dallas was besieged with talent from every corner of the world, seemingly. I like the fact that people use the WrestleMania as a tent pole to bring in their own shows. it's people can knock it, but it's pretty good marketing because that's where the fans are, and you got to go where the fans are to make your money. So good for them on that deal. And so I'm doing that this in April. So I'm kind of excited about that deal. I'm not excited about the plane ride over and back.
I was just going to mention that. My God, what a trip that's got to be.
Yeah, I got a portable CPAP machine that I can wear on the flight, and that'll help me breathe and sleep better and all that good stuff. But I'm excited about it going over. It's kind of gets me back in the hunt and that world. So I've been kind of avoiding that because, like I previously said, COVID, illness, so forth. COVID's been a major deal. So now that it's let up a little bit, I just got my new passport in this week.
Nice.
I let it expire because I didn't think I was going to be traveling anywhere, at least in the immediate future. So it goes to show you got to be prepared at all times. Always have your bag packed.
There you go.
Always have your gear ready. Go to work. So for me, that means making sure you pack your hat. Other than that, I'm cool. I can wear whatever I want, so I'll get the damn hat with me. So I'm going to do that coming up. That should be a lot of fun. And I hope folks that listen to our show in that part of the world will make an attempt to come see us one of those 2 days.
Great opportunity to meet you.
Yeah. I meet a lot of people too, Paul. It's, I'm going to be sure to take a lot of pictures. I've grown to know that the older we get, you never know when your time's up, and tomorrows aren't guaranteed as we sit here on this show a lot. So I'm excited about seeing all my old buddies, a lot of them, and because you never know when you're going to see them again. Simple as that. So that should be a lot of fun.
Speaking of, a lot of fun and good things, and I want you to talk a little bit about what you're doing over at JR's BBQ, because people I'm seeing all over social media are loving what you're putting out over there, and they're having a lot of fun setting up their barbecues. It's springtime. Steaks are on the grill. The seasonings are happening. The barbecue sauce is ready to go. Can you talk about the opportunity for them to help you out, but also just add some of that flavorful grilling seasoning and those sauces to their refrigerators?
Well, there's nothing like it on the marketplace. It's not available in stores. It's only available at jrsbbq.com. Maybe someday that'll change, but the Federal Trade Commission and all the laws that are governing this distribution of food and where you can sell it, and when you can sell it, and where you can, all that stuff is daunting. But everything's made from my home family's recipes. Except the seasoning, that was a friend of mine invented it, created it, and passed it to me, and then we built the brand for that seasoning. You can do something as simple as people get in too big a hurry when they grill. Overall, you take steaks or chicken, season them season them with that all-purpose seasoning, and let them sit in the refrigerator for if you can do it overnight, you're way ahead of the game. If you can only do it for a few hours, like that morning, and you're going to cook that afternoon or that evening, that still will work. But letting it sit overnight just with the seasoning on it is you make the difference in a good steak to a great steak. And so check that out. And there's a lot of uses for that seasoning, as we've talked about here on the show. Our number one seller is still JR's original sauce. It's the same smell, the same aroma that I smelled as a kid, that when my mom would make it in the kitchen. And so it's a family thing for me. I don't need the success of the barbecues of the website to get me to the grocery store and back. Luckily, thank God. But I really want to continue to build a brand for Jan and my mom's sake and their respect to them. So that's kind of what you're doing when you support it. But we got good products, and it's not a gimmick deal. Well, he's only selling that stuff because he's a wrestling announcer on television. You can say anything you want, but bottom line, I'm doing it to honor my family. And plus it's good stuff. It's not a gimmick. It's not gimmick product. So jrsbbq.com and give us a shot. Check it out. Don't cost nothing to look.
Try it before you knock it. I'm telling you, you're going to be impressed from someone who's purchased it myself. The mustard, the honey mustard is my favorite. My goodness, the jalapeno honey mustard is where it's at for me. But all good stuff, JR. So definitely check it out, jrsbbq.com. And then before we get out of here, check out adfreeshows.com. So much going on over there. We just got to have JR on with Mike Chiodo going over Rock Hogan from WrestleMania 18. What a phenomenal event that was. And JR is doing all kinds of fun bonus stuff over there. So join us over there. Not only do you get JR, you get Jeff Jarrett, Eric Bischoff, Tony Schiavone, Kurt Angle. The list goes on and on. Conrad's adding to the group this year. It's just unbelievable what that man has done over there at Ad Free Shows.
Yeah, he's built a brand,
an empire. Yeah,
it's good. So he's like I feel like I'm working with Johnny Carson because he only shows up every now and then. You know, Carson used to be off about every other week.
Yeah, you're getting Jay Leno now.
Yeah,
I don't know about that. Yeah,
we're doing all right.
I like it. I like working with you, and I appreciate it. And I thank you so much again for this week, JR, going through the retrospective of Vader, the Hall of Famer. And next week, again, it's Ask JR Anything. Get your questions in. I guarantee you it will be a great time. On behalf of the voice of wrestling, you can hear him every Wednesday on Dynamite. My God, he's singing the lyrics to the stories they're telling on the screen, and we love every minute of it. He is Jim Ross. I'm Paul Bromwell. We'll see you next time right here on Grilling JR.
See you Wednesday night, everybody, on TBS. Thank you.